If it may please the court, counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on April 1st, 2019, Justin Bachheim arrived at work. He walked inside the shop of RJR Maintenance and Management, and his world stopped for a minute. Robert Fockler, Justin's boss, a man described as fair, a man Justin thought of as family, a man who would give you the shirt off his back and bring Apologize. Robert Fockler, Justin's boss, a man described as fair, a man Justin thought of as family, a man who would give you the shirt off his back and bring eggs in for his employees, lay on the floor, amid a pool of blood and broken eggs, apparently dead. Justin called 911, but when he turned Robert's body over, he knew he was gone. Regardless, Justin did as Colleen Stockert, the 911 dispatcher, instructed, and continued CPR chest compressions until paramedic and EMT personnel arrived on scene. Tanner Arthod, a paramedic from Metro Ambulance, rushed to respond with his partner, Kylan Williams, an EMT. Tanner and Kylan worked, assisted by other emergency personnel as they arrived on scene, to try to get Robert's heart to beat and Robert Fockler to draw breath. While they were engaged in this process, Mandan police officer John Henry arrived on scene. Seeing the apparent stab wounds on Robert's body and seeing a spot of blood a distance from the body, Officer Henry investigated further. Assisted by Officer Stepp and Officer Tessness, law enforcement cleared the building, noting 3 additional deceased victims, Lois Cobb, William Cobb, and Adam Fuhrer, each with gunshot and stab wounds. The unthinkable had happened. 4 individuals had gone to work at RJR Maintenance and Management on Monday, April 1st, 2019, arriving while the building was still closed to the public. Within minutes of their arrivals, William Cobb, Lois Cobb, Adam Fuhrer, and Robert Fockler had been murdered in an incredibly violent manner. Chad Trollin Isaak has been charged with the murders of Lois Cobb, with the murder of William Cobb, the murder of Adam Fuhrer, and with the murder of Robert Fockler at RJR Maintenance and Management on April 1st, 2019. Mr. Isaak has also been charged with burglary for entering into RJR Maintenance and Management while the building was closed to the public and while he was armed with a firearm in order to commit those murders. Finally, Chad Isaak is charged with committing the crimes of unlawful entry into a motor vehicle and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle for entering into and driving away in William Cobb's Dodge pickup. You've heard the testimony and seen the evidence against the defendant. Mr. Isaak, over the course of the past 2.5 weeks, the testimony and evidence in this case reflects the result of a methodical, detailed investigation spanning years and using combined and collaborative resources of multiple agencies and members of the community. With the discovery of 4 victims who'd been brutally murdered, and considering the size of the crime scene, Mandan Police Department requested assistance from the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation in this case. North Dakota BCI agents arrived on scene to process the RJR building as a crime scene. During the course of this trial, we've heard from a number of NDBCI agents. They testified to their training and to their experience. Many of the agents we've heard from through the course of this trial have specialized areas of training, including attending the National Forensic Academy. All of the agents have been trained in the proper collection of evidence and recording of evidence from a crime scene.
Can you slow down, please? Thank you.
All of the agents testified that they had performed searches and evidence collection per their standard procedure and utilizing appropriate safeguards to prevent contamination. What did we learn from this original crime scene? As part of the evidence in this case, you saw the video walkthrough. It was presented to us by Special Agent Sean Bannett. You also saw a virtual walkthrough, or PanaScan, presented by Special Agent Alex Drosky. Special Agent Drosky incorporated items of evidence into that PanaScan. This way, you could see where those items of evidence and evidence markers actually were positioned and collected from within RJR Maintenance and Management on April 1st, 2019. As we walked through the crime scene with Special Agent Drosky, we started near the area of Robert Fockler's body. Located to the left of the shop door as you enter, in the same manner as Justin Bachheim when he arrived to work. Special agents collected multiple items of evidence from this location, which we have seen throughout this trial. There was a footprint, unique in appearance among other work boot footprints. You heard Special Agent Joe Ahrens, the case agent of this case, tell you that the footprint was significant to the investigation because it had clearly walked through both blood and egg and was moving towards the shop door. Photographs of the blood and egg-inked footprint were taken and later sent to the ATF lab for comparison by Allison Reese. We'll come back to that footprint. Looking at the body of Robert Fockler in the walkthrough, and considering the testimony of law enforcement, EMT, and paramedic personnel, Robert Fockler appeared to have been in a struggle with his attacker before succumbing to his injuries, which appeared to be stab wounds and cuts. Looking near the body of Robert Fockler, Special Agent Drosky showed us where a bullet had impacted a bandsaw, behind where Robert had fallen. Special Agent Drosky showed us as well the copper jacket from that bullet that had separated on impact with the bolt on the bandsaw. The bullet itself was in fragments, which were also collected from the bandsaw and the floor below. As we continued to look around the area near Robert's body, we also saw signs of a struggle. We saw broken eggs, we saw blood, we saw sunglasses on the floor, sunglasses we later saw in surveillance video that Robert Fockler had been wearing on his hat when he arrived at RJR Maintenance and Management on April 1st, 2019. We saw as well a coffee mug with coffee spilled out of it and a clipboard with Adam Fear's cell phone still on it. It was on the floor in proximity to Robert Fockler's body. Finally, in this area, we saw a wire saw, described by some witnesses as a wire with rings on it, on either end. We heard testimony that that wire saw appeared to have blood on it. So the item was collected and sent to the North Dakota State Crime Lab for testing by Emily Hogue and analysis by Kyle Splickle. Like the bloody footprint, we'll come back to this wire saw. The crime scene documenters continued on to the body of Adam Fear. He'd been lying face down when encountered by paramedics and law enforcement personnel. Above where Adam Fear's body fell, there was an apparent bullet hole in a box marked burners. On closer inspection, as Special Agent Drosky showed us in the Panoscan, an intact bullet was removed from the box of stove burners high on the shelf over where Adam Fear lay. The bullet, as described by Special Agent Drosky, appeared consistent with the bullet that had split at the bandsaw bolt, both being a copper jacketed hollow point. In the case of the burner box bullet, Special Agent Drosky noted that maroon fibers, the same color that Adam Fear was wearing on April 1st, 2019, could be seen in the nose, indicating that this bullet had passed through an intermediary target, such as Adam Fear, before lodging in that burner box. Adam had apparent stab and gunshot wounds to his back and front, and appeared to be in full rigor at the time emergency personnel found his body. As we heard from Dr. Masello later, this is consistent with an individual who was running away shortly before his death. As we looked in greater detail at the area of the shop near Adam Fear's body, Adam Fear's wallet was seen. It wasn't on his person. It had been pulled out and it had been dropped in a walkway of the shop, on the other side of a workbench from Adam's body. The ID and other cards had been pulled out of the wallet and tossed on the bottom tray-like shelf of a wooden bench, indicating to Special Agent Joe Ahrens that the attacker had likely checked for the identity of Adam Fear. The wooden bench with the ID was moved, and it was noted that there were blood droplets beneath it. Per Supervisory Special Agent Pat Leonards, an expert in blood pattern analysis, this indicated it had been moved, likely to obscure view of Adam Fear's body from the door. We moved on in our walkthrough of the crime scene to the door between the shop and the office section of the RJR building. Special Agent Drosky pointed out that there was blood on the door separating the two. This blood was swabbed and sent in for analysis to the North Dakota State Crime Lab. This door entered into a break room, which served as a pass-through. Once inside the office structure, we moved to William Cobb's office, which he shared with Robert Fockler. William Cobb was slouched against the office door, his hat lying off to his left side. The hat had a hole in it, which corresponded with a hole in William's head. William was facing the door across the office, which led back to the shop. Special Agent Joe Ahrens showed us signs of a struggle within William Cobb's office, including a chair that had been tipped over near the wall and which had left a dent in the sheetrock. There was also a fire extinguisher lying in the middle of the room. The fire extinguisher, per both S.A. Ahrens and Mandan firefighter Clayton Schaff, was out of place and appeared to have been used as a weapon. William Cobb had been shot multiple times, including through and through gunshots to his arms, as well as having a large number of stab wounds to his front and back. Dr. Masello would later testify that the through and through gunshot wounds to his arms appeared to be defensive in nature and demonstrated scenarios of William trying to block his head from gunfire. While processing the scene, a bullet was recovered from William Cobb's right wrist, marking the third bullet from the crime scene, after the bullet from the bandsaw and the bullet from the burner box. Special Agent Drosky then took us from William Cobb's body to Lois Cobb's, which was lying in the entryway to the ladies' room in the main office structure of RJR. Officer Stepp described the scene when law enforcement first encountered Lois Cobb on April 1st, 2019, indicating that when Officer Tessness moved Lois, checking for signs of life, it appeared Lois's head had almost been cut off. As we took a look at the crime scene near Lois's body, we could see that near her legs, in the main office structure, there was a large pool of blood. Lois had no injuries to her lower extremities, nothing which indicated to law enforcement that this initial attack had not occurred outside of the bathroom first. SSA Leonards testified that the gravitational drop of blood on the top of Lois's shoe indicated that she would have been standing during this attack. Blood stains on the door frame at two different levels, two different heights, indicated that transfer of blood occurred as Lois continued halfway into the bathroom before falling to her knees. S.A. Drosky and SSA Leonards showed us blood staining on the back wall and cabinet in the bathroom at approximately knee height, which showed possible spurting blood moving in one direction with little to no interruption. Dr. Masello told us that in performing an autopsy on Lois Cobb, that she had a hematoma to her forehead. Dr. Masello stated this could be caused by the attacker's arm banding around her head. Dr. Masello indicated this would stabilize Ms. Cobb's head as the attacker cut her throat in either one broken movement or two separate movements. Ms. Cobb's glasses were found outside the bathroom near that original large pool of blood. The glasses also had a gravitational drop of blood, indicating to SSA Leonards and Special Agent Ahrens that someone dripping that blood had stood over those glasses after they had either fallen or been removed from Lois Cobb's face. Lois Cobb had obvious deep lacerations to her neck, a gunshot wound to her chest, and a large number of stab wounds to her front and to her back, which were visible at the crime scene. A bullet was recovered from Lois Cobb's shirt and her body as she was rolled over. A bullet was recovered from between Lois's shirt and her body as she was rolled over. That one bullet was recovered. As we virtually walked through this crime scene in the office area, we were taken to another location of evidence. Outside Lois Cobb's office, her cell phone, William Cobb's cell phone, some gift cards, and a concealed carry permit for Lois Cobb were apparently thrown against the wall. The location of the phones and the cards pulled out indicated to law enforcement that they had been separated from the victims' bodies and Lois Cobb's identity had been verified. While agents were documenting the crime scene and collecting evidence, Detective Derek Bernier had made his way from Williston to Mandan to assist in the investigation. Detective Bernier testified that his area of expertise is in forensic video analysis. Detective Bernier told us that when he arrived at RJR Maintenance and Management on April 1st, 2019, he was asked to locate the surveillance system. He indicated he located it, put a block on it to prevent it from altering, and extracted the data. Detective Bernier and Special Agent Ahrens told us that in looking at that surveillance camera data from April 1st, 2019, they could see each of the victims arrive to work. William Cobb and Lois Cobb arrived together at 6:34 a.m. in world clock time. A few minutes later, at 6:42, world clock time, a singular, masked, sweatshirted, gloved, and armed individual was seen entering RJR Maintenance and Management. This same individual leaves the building 5 minutes later at 6:47 world clock time and walked in the direction of William Cobb's pickup before re-entering a very short time later. That masked individual can be seen moving freely within RJR Maintenance and Management before he peeks his head outside the shop door, apparently looking for someone at 6:48 world clock time. Adam Fear arrived shortly thereafter at 6:56, pulling up in his RJR van. Adam entered the building through the same shop door, holding his phone stacked on his clipboard in his left hand and his coffee cup in his right. Robert Fockler was seen arriving in his pickup and entering through that same shop door at 7:01 a.m., carrying a bag full of egg cartons and wearing a hat with sunglasses on it. The masked, sweatshirted suspect is then seen leaving RJR Maintenance and Management approximately 2 minutes later, 21 minutes after entering. No one else was in or out until Justin Bachheim found Robert Fockler dead on the floor. Robert Fockler, Adam Fear, William Cobb, and Lois Cobb had each been murdered. When investigators wrapped up from the crime scene on April 1st, 2019, after processing and documenting the scene and collecting the evidence, law enforcement knew a number of things. 1, there was one and only one suspect. 2, the suspect had known that the business, although closed to the public, would be occupied by at least one of the Cobbs before 7 a.m., and appeared to wait for Robert Fockler to arrive, indicating evidence of pre-planning. 3, that suspect had utilized a sharp object capable of stabbing or cutting, most likely a knife, on all of the victims. 4, the suspect had utilized a firearm to shoot William Cobb, Lois Cobb, and Adam Fear, and left no shell casings on the vast shop floor, indicating the suspect had most likely utilized a revolver and had taken the casings with him. Number 5, the suspect had fired 9 shots based on the bullet wounds in the victims and the recovered fragmented bullet and bullets from Lois Cobb and William Cobb. The suspect had worn distinctive clothing, an orange, possibly reversible ski mask, an orange hooded zip-up sweatshirt, black gloves, black shoes that appeared to flop in the back, and that left a distinctive footprint, black jeans, a dark-colored shirt, and had carried a wire saw. We moved on through this trial to the RJR vehicle, William Cobb's Dodge pickup. While Special Agent Bannett was doing the video walkthrough of the crime scene, Morton County Sheriff's Deputy Andrew Trias responded to assist with the crime scene perimeter. While helping to clear RJR employees back and away from that RJR entrance, several employees, including Don Eliason, expressed concern to Deputy Trias that William Cobb's vehicle was not present at RJR. Donald Eliason testified that only William Cobb had keys to the vehicle and did not leave a copy of his keys at the business. Donald Eliason described that white Dodge pickup with an RJR decal to Deputy Trias. While Deputy Trias was establishing perimeter, Nathan Helm and Bruce Dintelman from Indigo Signs got his attention. They indicated that when Bruce had arrived before 7, there was no other vehicle present in the Indigo Signs parking lot. Nathan Helm testified that there was a vehicle in the lot when he arrived a short while after 7 a.m., though, and it was parked near the Indigo Signs pole sign. Deputy Trias noted that the vehicle in question, that had appeared shortly after 7 a.m., was in fact William Cobb's missing vehicle. The vehicle was surveilled and kept secure until sealed by North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation. An orange clump of fibers was stuck in the driver's side door handle. Although a portion of it was blown away in the wind, Special Agent Troy Kelly was able to collect a sample of that orange fiber on April 1st, 2019. This fiber was later submitted for analysis and comparison. As we heard Special Agent Troy Kelly and Supervisory Special Agent Pat Lennertz testify, North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation agents processed the rest of that vehicle, noting and swabbing what appeared to be bloodstains, as well as using a tape lift to recover additional orange fibers that were on the center console. Swabs were sent in for biological screening and DNA analysis. A swab of the driver's door armrest panel of this vehicle was screened for blood by Emily Hogue. As item 5 in her biological screening report, Emily Hogue testified that it tested presumptively positive for human blood. Kyle Splickle testified that the major profile at this location was a match for Robert Fockler, and the minor profile is consistent with Lois Cobb. The tape lift of the center console was later sent to Amy Machad for trace evidence, comparison, and analysis, which we will come back to later. So what did law enforcement learn from processing this RJR vehicle, or William Cobb's Dodge pickup? Law enforcement learned that the suspect, on leaving RJR maintenance and management and walking towards that RJR vehicle, had actually entered the vehicle and driven it to Indigo Signs, parking it near the pole sign in their lot. This was corroborated by Midway Lane's surveillance video from April 1st, 2019. The keys had to have been taken from William Cobb, who was the only one to have keys to that vehicle. While law enforcement continued conducting interviews, canvassing, reviewing surveillance video, and collecting evidence from William Cobb's vehicle, the autopsies of each of the victims were held. Lois Cobb and William Cobb's autopsies occurred on April 2nd, 2019. These were followed by Robert Fockler and Adam Fear's autopsies on April 3rd, 2019. Dr. Masello testified that William Cobb had suffered between 4 and 8 distinct gunshot wounds. One bullet had been recovered from the scene, falling from William Cobb's arm. 3 more bullets were removed from William Cobb's person, from his skull, from his spine, and from his shoulder. Law enforcement, based on the evidence from the crime scene and the number of located bullets, had concurred that William Cobb had been shot with 4 separate bullets. William Cobb had what Dr. Masello considered to be possible defensive wounds to his arms. These through-and-through gunshot wounds appeared to Dr. Masello to be consistent with William Cobb attempting to shield his head or neck from gunfire. Dr. Masello also noted 28 stab wounds to the front of William Cobb. Dr. Masello testified that many of those stab wounds could have been inflicted in a short period of time, especially if William Cobb had first been immobilized by the gunshot wounds. William Cobb had bruises to his forehead, which Dr. Masello testified could be consistent with William's head being held immobile while he was stabbed. Dr. Masello also noted that most of William's wounds, both gunshot and stab wounds, were to areas of vital organs, including the heart, the lungs, the head, and the abdomen. Dr. Masello ruled the cause of William Cobb's death, gunshot wounds to head and chest, with stab wounds and abdomen, to chest and abdomen, with the manner of death as a homicide. Dr. Masello next conducted the autopsy of Lois Cobb. He noted that Lois Cobb had been shot in the chest, but could still have been mobile for a period of time. Due to stippling on Lois's chest, Dr. Masello indicated that the attacker would have been standing quite close at the time of that gunshot. Dr. Masello also testified that Lois Cobb had greater than 45 stab wounds to her chest, abdomen, neck, and back, concentrating also on areas of vital organs and blood vessels, including the heart and lungs. Dr. Masello testified at length about the deep cutting wounds to Lois Cobb's neck, transecting her carotid artery. Dr. Masello indicated that these wounds, which ran from one side of Lois Cobb's neck to the other with a small break in the middle could have been made from 1 or 2 slashing motions with a sharp knife. Dr. Masello also testified that Lois Cobb had bruises to her forehead consistent with having her head held by an arm to stabilize it and expose her neck while it was slit from behind. Dr. Masello testified that this was almost certainly not the last wound or wounds inflicted. Dr. Masello indicated that some of Lois Cobb's stab wounds could have occurred post-mortem. He also ruled the cause of Lois Cobb's death to be multiple stab wounds, cutting wounds, and a gunshot wound to chest, and the manner of death was again homicide. On April 3rd, 2019, Dr. Masello performed the autopsy of Adam Fuhrer. Dr. Masello noted that the rigor mortis noticed by EMT and paramedic personnel on scene on April 1st, 2019, could have been brought on by Adam running away shortly before dying. Dr. Masello noted that Adam Fuhrer had sustained multiple gunshot wounds, 2 to the front and right upper chest, where 2 bullets were recovered from near his armpit and scapula. Dr. Masello indicated there was a 3rd gunshot wound to Adam Fuhrer's back, which had passed through and out his abdomen. Dr. Masello detailed 8 stab wounds to Adam's neck and upper chest, as well as 3 additional wounds to Adam's back. Dr. Masello again indicated that these wounds appeared to be targeted to blood vessels in the neck, as well as to vital organs such as the heart and lungs. Dr. Masello testified that the cause of Adam's death was the gunshot wounds to chest and abdomen, and the manner of death was homicide. Finally, Dr. Masello performed the autopsy of Robert Fockler. Dr. Masello detailed a number of stabbing and cutting wounds. Robert suffered stab wounds to his front chest, back of his neck, and arm, and more than 10 cutting wounds to his face and scalp, some of those being deep, as well to his arm. Dr. Masello testified that 1 stab wound went through Robert's heart and 1 perforated his coronary artery, which would have caused Robert's death in a very short period of time. Dr. Masello also testified that Robert Fockler had acquired what appeared to be defensive cuts on his fingers and hands, which are consistent with grabbing or blocking a knife. Dr. Masello testified that the cause of Robert Fockler's death was stab wounds to his chest, and the manner of his death was homicide. Blood spot cards were gathered from each victim and later submitted to the North Dakota Crime Lab as knowns for comparison purposes. 3 bullets were recovered from William Cobb's body, and 2 bullets were recovered from Adam Fuhrer's body. They were all turned over to law enforcement. These 5 bullets were described by Dr. Masello as intermediate caliber bullets, which would be consistent with a .357, .38, or 9mm caliber cartridge. In total, from the crime scene and autopsies, 9 bullets were recovered, which was consistent with law enforcement's original estimate at that original crime scene of RJR. We learned from the autopsies that we were still looking for a single-edged knife, which Dr. Masello stated could be consistent with a fillet or kitchen knife. That was based on the wounds that had been inflicted. The autopsies also corroborated that the gunshots inflicted were consistent with an intermediate caliber firearm. Due to the lack of any shell casings at the crime scene, Special Agent Joe Ahrens indicated law enforcement believed that based on their training and experience, they were looking for an intermediate caliber revolver. Dr. Masello testified that all of the wounds inflicted, though numerous, could have been inflicted in a short period of time, particularly if the victims had been immobilized by some of their wounds before others were inflicted. Dr. Masello further indicated the majority of wounds had been targeted towards areas of major vessels or organs, and that anyone with medical or anatomical knowledge would know that. S.A. Ahrens testified that Chad Isaak was a chiropractor and had previously served as a medic in the United States Navy. He possessed that anatomical knowledge. While law enforcement was still processing the original crime scene in William Cobb's vehicle, Angela Davis called into Mandan Police Department. We heard from Angela Davis, who stated that while she was working on April 1st, 2019 at McDonald's, her attention was caught by an individual wearing a black jacket, dark jeans, black footwear, and a camouflage ski mask crossing the street towards where she was standing outside McDonald's in Mandan. She was on her smoke break. Angela testified that her attention was fixed on this figure because he was masked and it was warm enough morning that Angela herself did not need a coat. Angela testified that she continued to watch that masked individual as he walked to a white Ford F-150 pickup that had been parked in the McDonald's parking lot. Angela testified that the vehicle appeared odd to her and that there was snow piled up over the license plate. Angela testified that she continued to watch the masked figure as he walked back and forth between the driver and passenger door before opening the passenger door and the passenger third door. Angela testified it appeared the masked figure had placed something from under his coat into the white pickup, making him appear skinnier as he emerged. The masked individual walked back to the driver's side and got into the pickup, leaving the parking lot via that frontage road to Memorial Highway. Angela Davis testified that the individual was still masked as he drove past, and his license plate was not visible. Detective Bernier testified, indicating that he took information of this suspect vehicle and pulled video surveillance to corroborate it. Detective Bernier saw what Angela Davis had described and followed that suspect vehicle, that white Ford F-150, by visiting area businesses up and down Memorial Highway and on Main Street in Mandan. Detective Bernier testified that he looked for unique characteristics of that suspect vehicle, including the snow on the bumper and across the license plate, as well as unique rust stains. Detective Bernier testified that he followed the suspect vehicle from McDonald's to Ron Lohman Motors, where the vehicle turned around to head back west on Memorial Highway. Detective Bernier told us that he followed that suspect vehicle with those unique characteristics from Memorial Highway, west on Main Street, to the Flying J Travel Center. Detective Bernier told us that he was requesting video from area businesses based on estimated travel time. Detective Bernier told us that he followed the suspect vehicle to Center, North Dakota, and finally to Washburn, corroborating at each video he located that the suspect vehicle had the same distinguishing characteristics, particularly, in his case, the snow on the bumper. Detective Bernier told us that he had no specific suspect in mind, but that he was following video surveillance. Surveillance video images of that suspect vehicle were then utilized to release 2 bolos to law enforcement across the state. Detective Bernier also testified that he located or viewed video from area businesses showing the masked, dark-clad individual leaving the area of Indigo signs and traveling on foot back to the suspect vehicle, that white Ford F-150. While Detective Bernier was tracking the white Ford F-150 with those unique characteristics from McDonald's on Memorial Highway to Washburn, Detective Henry and other investigators were contacting local businesses, trying to round up that surveillance video from the morning of April 1st, 2019. Tyler Henry, who was working as an investigator for the Mandan Police Department at the time, viewed all of those videos, pulling out any of evidentiary value, norming them to world clock time, and placing them in chronological order for purpose of building a timeline. Detective Henry focused on the movements, not only of the white Ford F-150, but on the movements of its occupant from the arrival at McDonald's at approximately 5:22 a.m. on April 1st, 2019, and tracking his movements from the white Ford F-150 towards the tree line near RJR Maintenance and Management prior to the murders. Detective Henry additionally reviewed RJR surveillance video and normed those videos to world clock time to be included within the timeline. Detective Henry accumulated video and reviewed that video, showing the suspect leaving RJR Maintenance and Management, then showing William Cobb's vehicle being driven to Indigo signs and parked, and that the suspect was running from the area of Indigo signs towards Midway Lanes before continuing to walk back to McDonald's and the same suspect vehicle. Detective Henry also obtained, reviewed, normed, and chronologically arranged video surveillance showing the suspect vehicle traveling west on Memorial Highway, and continuing west on Main Street in Mandan, again to the Flying J Travel Center. Detective Henry found video of the suspect vehicle driving north through Center before heading east on Highway 200 to Washburn, North Dakota. Detective Henry testified that he requested that maps and timelines be created to show the entrance and exit route of the suspect on April 1st, 2019. We heard from Ben Zachmeyer. Ben Zachmeyer testified that after he pulled video from Big O Tires for April 1st, 2019, he thought about it all night. Mr. Zachmeyer told us that he went back to Big O Tires and began reviewing back to see if the suspect had done a trial run. Mr. Zachmeyer told us that a week to the day before April 1st, 2019, or March 25th, 2019, he located video that was incredibly similar, showing the suspect vehicle arriving at almost an identical time, a suspect that was wearing identical clothing as on April 1st, 2019, and a suspect that was taking a similar route. Mr. Zachmeyer provided this information and these videos to law enforcement, which prompted Detective Henry to review norm times and chronologically order video from March 25th, 2019, showing that the suspect vehicle arrived at McDonald's and the suspect was walking a very similar route, apparently doing this dry run. Detective Henry testified he also had a timeline and map created for March 25th, 2019 for both the entrance and exit routes. Detective Henry testified that he ultimately turned his video and the timeline materials over to Special Agent Alex Drosky and North Dakota Slick for video analysis and creation of the actual trial exhibits. Detective Henry testified that based on the surveillance video and the investigation as a whole, we learned that we were looking for a singular suspect who drove a particular white Ford F-150 and who would be in possession of an orange sweatshirt, black gloves, black shoes, black pants, a black jacket, an orange and camouflage face mask, a knife, a gun, most likely a revolver, and ammunition, and possibly a wire saw. Next, we heard from Special Agent Drosky, who testified utilizing videos and stills that he had analyzed and verified were the same suspect and the same suspect vehicle throughout. Special Agent Drosky confirmed the suspect route to and from RJR Maintenance and Management. He confirmed the suspect vehicle drove west on Main Street in Mandan to the Flying J Travel Center before continuing on to pass by Security First Bank in Center, North Dakota. This was before making its way past River Egg and into Washburn. Special Agent Drosky testified that he was able to verify the suspect vehicle in the videos presented based on unique characteristics, such as the snow on the license plate, rust patterns, a single black door handle, unique dirt spots, black rails, a partially open black window, tire rims, and logos on the vehicle. Special Agent Drosky testified that he also verified each video showing the suspect on foot as being the same individual. Special Agent Drosky also took us through the videos and stills from March 25th, 2019, showing us that the suspect had done a trial run on that date. Special Agent Drosky testified that we learned that the suspect had driven out of town on April 1st, 2019, and ultimately to Washburn, North Dakota. S.A. Drosky stated that we also learned the suspect vehicle had these distinct features, such as the rust patterns, the single black door handle, the unique dirt spots, the black rails, a partially open back window, certain tire rims, and certain logos on the vehicle. I argue to you as well, ladies and gentlemen, that Chad Isaak took that route that would be most rural and encountering the fewest number of law enforcement officers. He didn't go back to Washburn through Bismarck or by heading north on Highway 1806, which are high traffic areas on workdays. Detective Cromer testified that he had independently viewed the bolo that contained the suspect vehicle and immediately thought it looked like Chad Isaak's vehicle. Detective Cromer said this identification was enhanced by the second bolo on April 3rd, 2019, but he wanted to get confirmation photographs to compare. Detective Cromer stated that he knew Chad Isaak's vehicle because he personally saw it driving several times a week for multiple years. Detective Cromer testified that he had only ever seen Chad Isaak and his dog in that vehicle. Detective Cromer testified that he had attempted to locate Chad Isaak's vehicle on 2 separate occasions on April 2nd and April 3rd, 2019, but was not able to locate the vehicle. Detective Cromer stated that on April 4th, 2019, he and Detective Matties went to Chad Isaak's residence and saw Chad Isaak's white Ford F-150 parked outside. Detective Cromer testified that he believed from conversations with Chad Isaak that Mr. Isaak was not a morning person, and he was very surprised to see Chad Isaak standing in his window, staring at Detective Cromer, whom Chad Isaak knew to be law enforcement. Detective Cromer obtained comparison photographs, and he and Detective Matties each confirmed that the suspect vehicle from Mandan was in fact Chad Isaak's vehicle. Detective Cromer testified that he contacted NDBCI to inform agents, to inform them that he had located that suspect vehicle. Detective Matties testified that he did surveillance on Chad Isaak's vehicle from the moment it was confirmed as a suspect vehicle. Special Agent Joe Aarons testified that after Detective Cromer had been seen by Chad Isaak taking those photographs, and while law enforcement was surveilling Chad Isaak's residence, Chad Isaak could be seen coming and going from his vehicle. Special Agent Joe Aarons testified that it took several hours to obtain the search warrants. During this time period, Special Agent Joe Aarons asked Detective Cromer to look at RJR's surveillance video of that masked suspect walking in the RJR shop. Detective Cromer testified that he identified the individual by his very distinctive walk, which he had compared to cross-country skiing. Detective Cromer stated he identified the suspect at RJR Maintenance and Management as Chad Isaak. Chad Isaak left his residence in his white Ford F-150 pickup, and a felony stop was performed by law enforcement. Detective Cromer testified that Chad Isaak was ordered to exit his vehicle with his hands up and get on the ground. Detective Cromer stated he walked up to Chad Isaak, and he testified that Chad Isaak was smiling as he laid on the ground. Deputy Copeland described Chad Isaak's demeanor as nonchalant, and that Mr. Isaak was seen smirking. Detective Cromer and Deputy Copeland testified that Chad Isaak never asked why he was being detained and never expressed concern, except about his dog, which struck officers as extremely strange in the circumstances. 4 search warrants were granted for the person of Chad Isaak, for his residence, for his business, and for his white Ford F-150. Officers executed those search warrants looking for the items that Detective Henry indicated we knew the suspect would or should have: an orange or camouflage reversible ski mask, an orange sweatshirt, black gloves, black shoes or footwear, a black jacket, black pants, a wire saw or saws, knives, firearms and ammunition, blood or DNA evidence, and fibers, etc. Special Agent Joe Aarons testified as to the search of Chad Isaak's person. Special Agent Aarons recovered clothing from Chad Isaak and performed tape lifts of that clothing to lift any fibers. Special Agent Aarons testified that he collected an orange fiber from Chad Isaak's maroon sweatshirt and one from his black shoe. These fibers and tape lifts were sent to Amy Mashad at the ATF lab for comparison and analysis. Special Agent Aarons collected Chad Isaak's shoes, black size 12 Avia sneakers, which were sent to Allison Reese of the ATF, who's an expert in footwear impression and analysis, for comparison to the bloody, eggy footprint near Robert Fockler's body. Special Agent Joe Aarons testified that he obtained fingernail clippings and scrapings from Chad Isaak, as well as a buccal swab for DNA comparison. These were all sent to the North Dakota State Crime Lab. Special Agent Aarons testified that he took photos of Chad Isaak, including under the clothes, to note any injuries or signs of struggle. Special Agent Aarons identified significant bruising as well as a scratch to Chad Isaak's knees and shins. Special Agent Aarons stated these injuries were significant because, based on the crime scene, he believed there had been a struggle with Robert Fockler and that the attacker would have likely knelt while inflicting injuries on the victims. Special Agent Joe Aarons' photographs of Chad Isaak show that he seemed unaffected by his detention, and Chad Isaak even chose to smile for the photographs. Multiple North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation agents testified that they assisted in executing a search warrant on Chad Isaac's residence. Chad Isaac knew law enforcement were outside of his home, having seen Detective Cromer hours before, and he'd had time to clean and get rid of evidence. Special Agent Matt Hyatt testified that he took photographs and located a long fillet knife with an orange handle and bent tip underneath some wet rags in the washing machine. Supervisory Special Agent Arnie Rummel and Special Agent Joe Ahrens testified they believed this knife to be the murder weapon, as it was a sharp fillet knife of the right size and had a bent tip, indicating it had struck bone or pierced entirely through one of the victims into the floor. Special Agent Joe Ahrens testified that based on the wet rags in the washing machine, which appeared to have been washed and bleached, the knife appeared to have been cleaned. Emily Hogue and Kyle Splickle from the North Dakota State Crime Lab explained to us that even a 10% bleach solution or a detergent could destroy DNA evidence. Other efforts had been undertaken to clean or launder items law enforcement was searching for. Special Agent Jesse Smith testified that in the dryer of Chad Isaac's residence, he located an orange zip-style sweatshirt with pockets. This sweatshirt was of a similar style and appearance to the sweatshirt seen on the suspect at RJR Maintenance and Management. This sweatshirt was ultimately sent to Amy Mashad for fiber analysis as a known sample for comparison. Also in the dryer was an orange and camouflage reversible ski mask. This also appeared to be the same as that worn by the suspect in RJR and moving to and from RJR on April 1st, 2019 and March 25th, 2019. The ski mask was also sent to Amy Mashad, an expert in fiber analysis who works for ATF, who used this ski mask as a second known in her comparison. Jesse Smith also found black pants, a black jacket, and a black and gray sweater in the dryer. The black quilted jacket, which is part of Exhibit 684, can be seen clearly on video surveillance from Big O Tires on both April 1st, 2019 and March 25th, 2019. Finally, Special Agent Jesse Smith located in that same dryer a second pair of size 12 black Avia shoes with an elasticated backstrap. These shoes appeared identical in style to those collected from his person on April 4th, 2019. These black shoes, like the shoes that were taken from Chad Isaac's person on April 4th, appear to be the same shoes worn by the suspect in the RJR videos and in surveillance video from Big O Tires. These black shoes were also sent to foot impression analyst Allison Reese at the ATF for comparison with that bloody, eggy footprint. All of these items located by Special Agent Jesse Smith in the dryer also appeared to have been laundered. Supervisory Special Agent Arnie Rummel and Supervisory Special Agent Lennertz testified that they located black gloves. These gloves appeared to be drying on the legs of an upside-down chair. Supervisory Special Agent Rummel testified that these gloves appeared to be the gloves worn by the suspect at RJR Maintenance and Management, and that the pattern on the gloves showed up on the RJR vehicle. Supervisory Special Agent Rummel testified these gloves appeared to have been bleached based on the residue and the smell on those gloves. The gloves were collected and sent to Amy Mashad for fiber comparison. Supervisory Special Agent Lennertz testified that there was a smell of bleach throughout the spare bathroom as well, and that the bathroom appeared abnormally clean. Supervisory Special Agent Lennertz testified that there was a watch in the bathroom sink, which also smelled of bleach. Emily Hogue from the North Dakota Crime Lab testified that she had noted during screening of that watch that it appeared to have been bleached. SSA Rummel testified that he also located revolver gun parts in a container labeled Chad Veg Soup in the freezer of Chad Isaac's residence. Supervisory Special Agent Rummel stated that these parts also smelled of bleach and appeared to have been concealed in the container in the freezer to avoid detection. SSA Rummel testified that he believed, based on the crime scene, based on the fact the revolver had been dismantled to get rid of distinguishing characteristics, that it had been bleached and had been hidden, that he had located the firearm used in the RJR homicides. SA Pat Helfrich testified that he was also assisting in the search of Chad Isaac's residence. When he opened a closet and noted a sock which appeared to be concealing something, which had been stashed on a closet shelf. S.A. Helfrich testified that he opened the sock and located a box of 38 special ammunition and 9 shell casings in a baggie. The box of ammunition had 12 cartridges missing. Special Agent Pat Helfrich testified this was significant because from the crime scene and autopsies, law enforcement knew that there had been 9 rounds fired. These rounds had all been accounted for and collected by law enforcement. Yet no casings had been located at the crime scene, indicating a revolver had been used. Special Agent Helfrich further testified that the ammunition recovered with the casings in the sock matched those casings and was for a .38 special revolver. The only firearm recovered in this case, capable of expelling those rounds, was the disassembled firearm from Chad Isaac's freezer. Arnold Esposito, the firearms and toolmark examiner from the ATF lab, testified that those cartridges could also be fired from a .357 revolver. A box for a .357 LCR Ruger revolver was recovered from Chad Isaac's residence, along with a receipt for that firearm in his name, dated in April of 2018. Arnold Esposito testified that the component parts of the LCR Ruger revolver are typical of all types of LCR Ruger revolver, not just a .38 special. Arnold Esposito testified that the rifling database was not all-inclusive and was constantly being updated, and stated the one we were using was from 2016. Arnold Esposito further testified that he recovered bullets, or that the recovered bullets were each consistent in class characteristics with each other and were consistent with the bullet portion of the unfired cartridges from Chad Isaac's sock. Arnold Esposito also testified that the spent casings were consistent with the unfired cartridges from Chad Isaac's sock, indicating that the 9 fired bullets and the spent casings came from the box of unfired cartridges that Chad Isaac had packaged in that sock. Arnold Esposito testified that these bullets and casings could all have come from the same revolver. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that Chad Isaac kept these casings as trophies or souvenirs of his kills. Special Agent Matt Hyatt testified that he also photographed several wire saws within Chad Isaac's residence. These wire saws were in and outside of packaging. The wire saws appeared to be consistent with the wire saw recovered from RJR Maintenance and Management near Robert Fockler's body. The wire saw from the crime scene was sent to the North Dakota State Crime Lab for biological screening and DNA analysis. Emily Hogue screened the rings of the wire and the wire separately, and noted they both tested presumptively positive for the presence of human blood. DNA analysis was performed on item 10A, the rings, and Kyle Splickle testified that the profile was a mixture of individuals from which Robert Fockler, Lois Cobb, and Adam Fuhrer could not be excluded. While processing Chad Isaac's residence, law enforcement officers noted other items of concern. Chad Isaac left sticky notes, which weren't mere reminders but seemed to speak to a disturbed state of mind. Chad Isaac's residence contained sticky notes cautioning him that this is the time of year you do stupid things. Another sticky note cautioned, "You are not the caped crusader for justice. Only fight those battles the Lord tells you to. The devil wants you fighting because you like to." Special Agent Matt Hyatt and Special Agent Jesse Smith testified that these messages were concerning, as they made them question what was going on in Chad Isaac's mind that he would leave himself such a message. Now, Mr. Quick would have you believe that these are biblical messages. And I argue to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the caped crusader does not show up in any version of the Bible. We know that Chad Isaac was worried about the new management of RJR. We know this through the testimony of Ben Pace, who told us that Chad Isaac initiated conversation with him regarding the pet policy and seemed concerned about his dog. Ben Pace told us that the Hainers, the former park managers, and Chad Isaac's friends had been served notice to leave the park, after their dog had bit Ben Pace. After this, according to Ben Pace and Jackie Fockler, the new owner implemented a more restrictive dog policy. Ben Pace also told us that Chad Isaak had been talking about moving snow, but when Robert Fockler offered to pay him, Mr. Pace indicated Chad Isaak wanted to think about it. Jackie Fockler previously testified that Chad Isaak never did follow up and was not being paid by RJR to move snow in his area. The search of Chad Isaak's residence started with a search warrant and a list of items that we believed had been utilized in the commission of the murders: burglary and unauthorized use and unlawful entry into that RJR vehicle. Within Chad Isaak's residence, law enforcement officers not only located most of these items, but they were bundled together, washed, bleached, and hidden. These efforts to conceal what Mr. Isaak had done perhaps is summed up best by what Supervisory Special Agent Arnie Rummel testified based on his many years of experience in many death investigations. Mr. Isaak wanted to hunt utilizing a blaze orange knife, wearing a blaze orange sweatshirt and a blaze orange ski mask, all while sneak attacking his victims. When he left RJR Maintenance and Management, like on his way to the shop, he wanted to blend into his surroundings and not be seen, concealing all evidence of what he did. And until Detective Cromer was standing outside of his house on the morning of April 4th, 2019, Chad Isaak thought he got away with it. But the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, speaks for itself. While the search warrant was being conducted on the residence, a second search warrant was being conducted on Mr. Isaac's chiropractic office. Special Agent Scott Volz testified that there were several items that caught his attention during this search warrant. S.A. Volz noted the day planner or calendar that showed that on the dates of March 25th, 2019 and April 1st, 2019, the defendant, Chad Isaak, was free in the morning. Special Agent Hyatt testified that he confirmed 2 other appointments from noon and after had been rescheduled as well, giving Chad Isaak the opportunity to travel to RJR, commit these crimes, and return home. Jody Merschel confirmed that there were no outgoing calls from Chad Isaak's business line until the evenings of April 1st, 2019 and March 25th, 2019. Mr. Merschel also testified that the sole incoming call in the morning of March 25th, 2019 did not indicate that someone was in the office at that time. Joseph Schmidt testified that he had a chiropractic appointment with Chad Isaak, who behaved strangely by leaving the room and then not resuming the adjustment that he had started, things Chad Isaak had never done before April 1st, 2019. Dora Sorensen testified that Chad Isaak rescheduled her noon appointment on April 1st, 2019, stating he had a dental appointment. The dental office that Chad Isaak utilized, for whom he had the business card in his home, indicated that in fact Chad Isaak did not have an appointment, not on April 1st, 2019, and that he had not requested that his patient records be transferred to any other dentist, which would be routine. S.A. Veltz also indicated that the day planner contained the notation for March 28th, 2019 of "Stay, RJR, me." S.A. Veltz indicated this was notable because that notation appeared a mere 3 days before the murders at RJR Maintenance and Management. S.A. Veltz also testified that there was ammunition of variant calibers contained within a microwave in the chiropractic office and approximately 16 pairs of the same size 12 black Avia shoes recovered from Chad Isaak's dryer, as well as his person on April 4th, 2019. These shoes appeared not to have been worn, whereas the shoes from the dryer and from his person appeared almost broken down with wear. Special Agent Tim Helmer and Special Agent Craig Sandusky testified regarding the search of Chad Isaak's white Ford F-150. Special Agent Tim Helmer showed us photos of the outside of Chad Isaak's vehicle, pointing out areas like rust patterns on the rear driver's side tire wall, dirt splatters on the front of the vehicle, logos, black rails on the box, one black handle, the suicide or half door of the vehicle, the rims, and other features. We also saw Special Agent Drosky's side-by-side images of the suspect vehicle from April 1st, 2019, from March 25th, 2019, and compared with Chad Isaak's vehicle on April 4th, 2019. Special Agent Drosky showed us so many areas of correlation, areas that cannot be reproduced, such as the mud splatters and the rust patterns. Additionally, Special Agent Drosky showed us side-by-sides of the vehicles from April 1st and March 25th, compared with Chad Isaak's vehicle, showing the green Menards bucket in his front seat. We can also see in those side-by-side videos from Ron Lohman Motors that there's a white bucket in the bed of the suspect vehicle on both April 1st, 2019 and March 25th, 2019. That white bucket is still in Chad Isaak's vehicle at the time of his apprehension on April 4th, 2019. While processing the vehicle, S.A. Helmer documented the items located within that green Menards bucket that was located on the front passenger seat beneath a comforter. Within that bucket, S.A. Helmer located a sticky note, again a caution to the defendant, Chad Isaak, general rule of thumb, when money is involved, no one is telling the truth. Also within the green bucket, Special Agent Helmer located Chad Isaak's wallet, containing his driver's license and an RJR business card with Robert handwritten on it. In processing the vehicle and removing items of evidence, Special Agent Helmer showed us where orange fibers were located on multiple items within the vehicle, such as hats and boots. Special Agent Helmer testified that these fibers were collected, as well as tape lifts taken from the back of Chad Isaak's driver's seat. The fibers and tape lifts were also sent to Amy Mashad for fiber analysis and comparison. Again, we'll come back to the fiber analysis and comparison in a moment. In processing Chad Isaak's vehicle, we heard testimony from Special Agent Helmer and Special Agent Craig Sandusky that blood samples were collected from areas such as the driver's and passenger's door handles. Special Agent Helmer indicated that samples had been taken from a variety of other locations, including on the driver's side door jamb, where reddish-brown staining could be observed, as well as on the black plastic latch of the driver's side third door. The area from the driver's side third door was swabbed for a presumptive test on scene and tested presumptively positive for human blood. Additional swabs were taken along with the black latch itself, which was removed. These items and all other swabs were sent in for biological screening and DNA analysis. Emily Hogue testified that the swab taken of the driver's side door jamb, item number 14, tested presumptively positive for human blood. Kyle Splickle testified that a human DNA profile was developed at this location. Kyle Splickle testified that Robert Fockler could not be excluded from the major profile, and testified that the likelihood of another human being existing with a similar profile is a statistical improbability, in that it's 1 in 482 billion of a chance. Kyle Splickle stated that you would not expect this profile to occur more than once in the human population. The minor profile correlated with both Chad Isaak and Lois Cobb at this location. The black plastic third door latch, item 16, also tested presumptively positive for human blood, utilizing the hemotrace during the biological screening process. Emily Hogue testified that she developed a profile for item 16 as well. Kyle Splickle analyzed that profile and testified that the major profile matched Chad Isaak, and the minor profile could not exclude either Lois Cobb or Robert Fockler. From Emily Hogue's biological screening, we have presumptive positive human blood samples taken from the RJR vehicle, which correlate with multiple victims of the RJR homicides. We also know from the testimony of Kyle Splickle that items 14 and 16A, which are swabs of Chad Isaak's vehicle, also tested presumptively positive for human blood. And per Mr. Splickle, connect Chad Isaak with blood correlating with 2 of the victims of the RJR homicides. Other than the homicides, there is no chance for DNA, particularly blood DNA, from Robert Fockler and Lois Cobb to be transferred to the inside of Chad Isaak's vehicle. Defense counsel would have us believe that this is a result of contamination. However, that assumption is contrary to the testimony, it's contrary to the evidence as presented. The testimony and evidence is that these areas of blood were not contacted by any law enforcement officer, with the exception of Special Agent Sandusky, who collected the swabs and was wearing appropriate PPE, including the Tyvek suit. At the initial crime scene, law enforcement recovered a unique footprint. It was near Robert Fockler's body, and it was cast in blood and egg yolk. That footprint was photographed, with a copy being sent to Allison Reese, along with the shoes that had been recovered from Chad Isaak's dryer, and the shoes recovered from Chad Isaak on April 4th, 2019. Ms. Reese labeled the dryer shoes as her Exhibit 12 and the shoes from Chad Isaac's person as her Exhibit 13 for purpose of her report. Ms. Reese testified that she looked at the provided footprint photograph with scale and then converted it to a 1-to-1 or a true size image in black and white. She did the same for the photograph, which did not contain a scale. Ms. Reese stated that she noted 2 distinct footprints in the 1-to-1 image at State's Exhibit 863. Ms. Reese testified that she labeled these as CDT1, the bloody, eggy footprint, and CDT2, which Ms. Reese described as a stars and bars pattern indicative of a work boot. S.A. Joe Aarons had similarly testified that the footprint labeled by Ms. Reese as CDT2 appeared to him as a work boot, utilized by first responders as well. Ms. Reese testified that she then took each shoe from Exhibit 12, the dryer shoes, and Exhibit 13, Chad Isaac's person's shoes, and dusted them with fingerprint powder before imprinting them on sticky paper. She copied those images to projection overlays, and Ms. Reese testified that the overlays at Exhibits 857 and 859, which correspond to the left shoes of each pair, both Exhibit 12 from the dryer and Exhibit 13, which had been taken from Chad Isaac's person, and that these were a match in class characteristics. Ms. Reese pointed to the tread pattern, the large triangular void in the heel, and the line voids in the ball of the foot. Ms. Reese testified that based on her comparison, the shoe that caused the footprint that appeared in egg and blood at the crime scene would have to be similar in all class characteristics to Chad Isaac's shoe, a size 12 Avia sneaker. Finally, Amy Michaud testified regarding her trace analysis and comparison. Ms. Michaud detailed her thorough process of testing and comparing fibers across multiple characteristics such as optical properties, fluorescence, color, shape, chemistry, and composition. Ms. Michaud stated that for her to make an inclusion or to testify that fibers were indistinguishable, they would have to match across all those characteristics. If at any point they had not, they would be excluded. Ms. Michaud also testified that in her training and in her experience, there is variation, even in mass-produced items. Ms. Michaud testified that she received the orange sweatshirt and the orange camo face mask as knowns in this case. Ms. Michaud also testified she received tape lifts from the RJR vehicle, from Chad Isaac's clothing from his arrest, from the black gloves recovered from his residence, from Chad Isaac's Ford F-150, as well as the victim's clothing. Ms. Michaud testified and showed us her results, utilizing the orange camo face mask recovered from Chad Isaac's dryer as a known. Ms. Michaud testified that not only are the fibers indistinguishable from the ski mask fibers in all respects that appear on Chad Isaac's clothing, his t-shirt, his maroon sweatshirt, as well as his driver's seat of his Ford F-150 and his gloves, but there are indistinguishably similar fibers on the center armrest of the RJR vehicle, on the shirt of William Cobb, on the blouse of Lois Cobb, on the coat, sweatshirt, and jeans of Robert Fockler, and on the sweatshirt of Adam Fuhrer. Ms. Michaud testified that the areas of concentrated fiber and transfer were on the upper clothing of each of the victims, where the majority of their wounds happened to be concentrated. Ms. Michaud also conducted comparisons and analysis utilizing the orange hooded sweatshirt as a known. Ms. Michaud testified that she compared the fibers from the same tape lifts and victim clothing to the orange sweatshirt fibers. Ms. Michaud testified that indistinguishable darker orange polyester fibers of the sweatshirt were located on Chad Isaac's black t-shirt, on the shoe taken from his person on April 4th, 2019, and on his gloves. Ms. Michaud testified these indistinguishable fibers also were located in the RJR vehicle, on the exterior door and the center armrest, as well as on the t-shirt, shirt, and jeans of William Cobb, on the blouse and pants of Lois Cobb, on the coat, the sweatshirt, the shirt, and the jeans of Robert Fockler, and on the sweatshirt, number 1 and number 2, and jeans of Adam Fuhrer. Ms. Michaud testified that these fibers were again a match across all testing platforms. Ms. Michaud testified that there were also blue polyester fibers that appeared on Chad Isaac's black t-shirt, on his jeans, and on his maroon sweatshirt, as well as on the center armrest of the RJR vehicle. Ms. Michaud could not pinpoint the source of those fibers, but noted that they were indistinguishable. Ladies and gentlemen, You have heard all of the testimony in this case. You have received all of the evidence. Throughout the testimony in this case, you have heard that investigators followed that evidence. That evidence figuratively and literally led us to Chad Trollen Isaak. His vehicle matches the suspect vehicle in all unique features. We can see this from the comparison photographs with our own eyes. Down to the green bucket in that passenger seat, the mud on the front bumper, the rust on the black tire well, the black rails, the single black handle, the third door, the rims. All of these and more made it possible for Detective Cromer to see that vehicle, to recognize that vehicle, and to call other law enforcement officers to confirm that Chad Isaak's vehicle was the suspect vehicle we were looking for. Warrants to search were granted. They were limited to the items utilized in the commission of the murders, as well as the clothing seen in surveillance video. Both the orange as well as the black and camouflage hat or clothing that was worn inside and outside RJR on the suspect's way to and from RJR maintenance and management. All of the items, the orange sweatshirt, the ski mask, the wire saws, a knife, the revolver, ammunition, the exact number of shell casings, a black jacket, black pants, gloves, shoes, they were all located within Chad Isaak's residence. Considerable effort had been taken to wash and bleach the suspect clothing and to bleach weapons. Considerable effort had been taken to conceal his license plate, to conceal his person while walking to and from his vehicle, and to avoid the busiest roads, and to conceal evidence within his home. Think of the gun parts. Think of the shell casings and ammunition, Chad Isaak's trophies of his kills. He was compelled to keep these items and believed he had gotten away with his crimes. But on April 4th, 2019, he looked out through his window and he saw Detective Cromer taking pictures of his vehicle. And at that time, he began clearing up evidence of his crimes. The laundry with the knife was still wet. The odor of bleach was fresh. Items were in the dryer and were hanging up to dry. Still, that evidence existed. Blood connecting two of the victims to Chad Isaak was present on his vehicle, on the inside of the door and the black latch that was swabbed by Emily Hogue herself, and on a swab of the door frame swabbed by Special Agent Craig Sandusky. 1 in 482 billion, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the odds that that blood is not Robert Fockler's. That is more than almost 4 times as many people that have ever existed in this world. It's less than once in the human population chance that anyone else would match that DNA profile. Robert Fockler's blood is on Chad Isaak's vehicle, and there's no excuse, there's no rational explanation for that except that Chad Isaak committed these murders and transferred that blood when he got into his vehicle at McDonald's. Lois Cobb can also not be excluded from that sample. On the swabs of the third door latch, there's again blood that matches Chad Isaak and also cannot exclude Robert Fockler as well as Lois Cobb. Think about the crime scene. Doesn't it make sense that the 2 most brutal murders, Lois Cobb and Robert Fockler, would result in blood transfer to their assailant? I argue to you, ladies and gentlemen, that that is exactly what happened in this case. Throughout the searches of Chad Isaak's residence, his person, and his chiropractic office, 18 pairs of the same shoes were located. Size 12, black, Avia sneakers, with a distinctive triangular tread pattern and a large void in the heel. Recall that Allison Reese stated that both Chad Isaak's worn left shoes, those located in his dryer as well as those located on his feet at the time of his arrest, matched that bloody, eggy footprint at the crime scene near Robert Fockler's body. Finally, we look at the fiber analysis in comparison. The orange sweatshirt, an orange reversible face mask that appear to look identical to those worn by the suspect at RJR Maintenance and Management. Those bright orange garments, indicative of hunting, contained fibers that were indistinguishable from questioned fibers that were located on every victim and in the RJR vehicle, as well as on Chad Isaak's own clothing and his own vehicle. You heard Amy Michaud's testimony. If those fibers, which can vary even batch to batch among mass-produced items, failed to match on any level of her testing process, which tests for color, optical properties, fluorescence, shape, and chemical composition, she would have excluded them. She could not. She testified the fibers from the orange reversible face mask were indistinguishable from the lighter orange fibers on clothing of each victim, as well as in the RJR vehicle. Ms. Michaud testified that similarly, the dark orange fibers of the sweatshirt were indistinguishable from the dark orange fibers on each of the victim's clothing and in the RJR vehicle. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to be given this case to deliberate over the testimony and evidence with regard to these 7 charges, which occurred on April 1st, 2019 at RJR Maintenance and Management here in Mandan, Morton County, North Dakota. The murder of Lois Cobb, the murder of William Cobb, the murder of Adam Fuhrer, and the murder of Robert Fockler, as well as the burglary or entering of RJR Maintenance and Management when that building was not open to the public with intent to commit the crime of murder and while armed with a firearm, as well as the unlawful entry into or concealment within a vehicle and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle for entering William Cobb's Dodge pickup without his permission and driving it to Indigo Signs. All of the evidence, all of the testimony shows us that one person committed these crimes. No other person was inside of RJR Maintenance and Management at the time of the murders. That person would be the only one to be able to access William Cobb's keys and to move his vehicle. That person was tracked from where William Cobb's vehicle was ditched at Indigo Signs back to his vehicle at McDonald's, and his vehicle was tracked back to Washburn, where he lived and worked. That person is Chad Isaak. I'm asking you to find Chad Troll and Isaak guilty of each and every one of those 7 charges, as the state has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt.